Good evening, you're watching Estuary TV News. Coming up, reading the tea leaves, a new cafe at Humberston Library, and multitasking parliamentarians. We hit the streets to ask if MPs should have more than one job. And I'll be talking to Tony Barker to review the week's regional press. Welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Richards. First of all, it's over to Dan Kemp for the news headlines.
Humberside Police are set to join forces with another police authority in a bid to combat austerity cuts. Speaking as he announced a strategic partnership between the force and their South Yorkshire counterparts, Matthew Grove made it clear there's no intention to try and merge the forces, but is looking at ways the two can work together to share resources, similar to the way in which they share IT and human resource support functions at present. He also reaffirmed his commitment to retaining officers.
When we're in effect reducing the budget of Humberside Police by about a third, and as the vast majority of funding is on people, over time there will be a reduction in the headcount. What I'm trying to do is make sure that we maximise the number of warranted uniformed police officers because they are absolutely vital for protecting the public, and they are what the public tell me they want to see. They want to see PCSOs and uniformed officers on patrol in their community, in their streets, preventing crimes from happening.
Drivers are being warned to be aware of new rules on driving while on drugs, which come into force on Tuesday. As it currently stands, people can only be prosecuted if police prove they are unfit to drive because of illegal or legal drugs. But new laws will introduce an illegal limit, as with drink driving. It will mean police only have to prove the drugs were in your system with a simple test, not that they impaired your driving ability. The people of Hull will be hit by huge debt, and the Hull City Council may have to renege on election promises made in 2011. That's according to Lib Dem opposition to the Labour administration after yesterday's budget was passed. They claim Labour failed to protect the budget and frontline services, a promise made when they were elected. But they also failed to properly address the need to balance the failing budget, meaning the council will rack up debt for years to come.
All the Labour administration talk about cuts elsewhere. Their own proposals that got voted through today will see a massive debt taken on by this city and by the taxpayers of this city for a generation to come. They'll be paying off that debt, and in order to do so, we'll have to make cuts to those services that they promised to protect when they came into power back in 2011.
They did run the council 4 years ago. Fortunately, the electorate sussed them out and kicked them out. And the reason being is they couldn't manage the budget. And they cut, in sheer panic, 1,000 jobs out of the council structure in 1 month. That's no way to run a council.
That's all from me. Bye for now.
With me to look at the week's regional press, Tony Barker, who is the Communications and PR Manager for Linkage Community Trust, amongst other things. Tony, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me, Hugh.
Just remind me, what is Linkage Community Trust? What do you do?
In Grimsby particularly, we run a college for people with learning disabilities from the age of 16 plus. Plus we also try and find jobs for the students once they leave us as well. But we operate across the whole of Lincolnshire and now Staffordshire as well. So delivering a whole range of services. In our 39th year, so next year is the big 4-0 for linkage. We're looking forward to that.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to that anniversary myself sometime. You're also involved in a radio station in Yorkshire.
Yes, in fact, this has been a good week for us with being involved with the BBC Community Reporter Scheme. Community radio is I think it certainly is a growing media across the country, and in East Yorkshire I'm involved as a director of a new station called Westwolds Radio based at Pocklington, and that's an area which I think is in need of, like any area, more media, and this one is a particularly good one we're going to launch in June time.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here. We're quite in favour of local broadcast media ourselves. What's your first story? What have you found?
Well, I think this one is probably a reflection of what's happening across the whole of Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. This is for the Grimsby Telegraph for this week, and I'm sure Hull Daily Mail has featured similar sort of coverage. When there's a press statement issued from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for the Humberside Force,
Matthew Grove. Yep.
Yes, this week saying about they had talks the previous week about merging some services. The word merger is a hot one here. Fears police will merge with neighbouring force. Well, in this day and age, with so many cuts in local government and in the fire and police services, you think, well, is the only way forward, given what Lincolnshire Police said about if they get any more cuts, they're going to be sort of almost standing still, if not be almost unviable. Well, the same issue will happen with Humberside and South Yorkshire police forces. Here, this is a reference to the Police Force Federation, Paul Yeoman, saying that, as ever, it'll be a merger in 5 years' time. That's the nature of the story. Matthew Grove, the police commissioner, is saying the savings will need to be £31 million by 2019. It begs the question, in this week when North East Lincolnshire and Hull councils have both set their council taxes with 2% rises that they can only do because of government restrictions, then in the end, what happens to public services? It's so tight.
If the forces merge, of course, then there are economies of scale there, which is an advantage. What are the disadvantages?
Well, I suppose one of the myths, I suppose, that's been talked of, and it is about if you live in Brough, say, in East Riding, and you have an incident, where are you going to call? And you call 101 service, and is that person going to be somewhere in Sheffield who has no idea where East Yorkshire is? That's the problem in the whole country in the first place. No one actually knows the east side of the country very well, and therefore they don't know where we are.
Well, that's a matter of training. That could be sorted out. That's a matter of having a map on the wall of the CAD room.
It was true. That's what it generally applies to everything. We're governed by postcodes. Postcodes are the greatest misnomer in terms of geography, because they're governed by where particular postal sorting offices are. But in this case, I think the issue is, are there going to be enough people on the ground to serve us and work with us, whether it's police or others? We all want to see greater efficiency. I'm sure we all think, well, if councils and these services are surviving and working okay now, I mean, are they working okay? Are the staff overworked? But are they functioning okay now? Then what difference will further cuts make? And we put more pressure on more people.
Well, we're talking of local government cuts. We found a nice little story about school meals here.
One that makes me smile, I suppose, like I think with you, Driffield newspaper here, Driffield Post, reports on council pledge on small meal portions. This is about Driffield Junior School, which allegedly, according to one parent, fed his son a mere, one fish cake and 5 chips, no vegetables and a small biscuit for pudding.
It's very Oliver Twist, isn't it?
Well, of course, these days there are restrictions. No, restrictions isn't the word. There are guidelines, about everything. So school food plan has guidelines. So it says that, probably there should be obviously the vegetables. We know some schools do breakfast as well. And here...
That does sound extremely mean, though, and we can't really expect a small child to learn anything that afternoon if all he gets for lunch is a fish stick and 5 chips.
Well, the parent said, I took this up with the school and they told me that the amounts they are allowed to serve per child has been recently reduced by East Riding Council, who amazingly say, actually, no, it's down to the school. So something somewhere has possibly gone wrong, maybe just that day. And I'd hope vegetables will normally be on the menu because we now have breakfast that seem to be served in schools these days. They weren't when I was a young lad. We had the milk. Maybe you had the same too, Hugh, when you were at school.
Yep, we had bun break.
Yes. But this one here, I'm not knowing of it as a problem elsewhere, but what East Riding area has, though, is a recently announced head teacher from Market Wheaton's Mount Pleasant School, who's now a troubleshooter at schools across the country. Well, one up the road from her, she can go and sort out the school dinners at Driffield.
There you go. You've got the solution there,
I have.
So another one, this is a
sporting related
story, but it's really about autism.
It is, and this is
Hull
Daily
Mail.
Mail. From Wednesday's Hull Daily Mail this week. Good to see that the Tigers are doing very well. This is Hull City, of course. And Dean Windass, one of their heroes and ambassadors for sport, he's taking part in this latest campaign linked to the Ice Bucket Challenge. Well, the reason I chose this particularly was because autism is the focus. And of course, a lot of the young people who come to Linkage in Grimsby and the rest of Lincolnshire have autism. And autism is a condition which can be so varied that really you don't even notice one person has autism.
People always talk about the spectrum, don't they?
Huge spectrum. It is a really, really wide spectrum as well. You can get somebody who's really good and really with it. They all have certain conditions like they expect routine. Well, this is focusing around a 13-year-old girl called Maisie Shaw, who's in a mental health unit in Sheffield because of no beds in East Yorkshire. But the story really is about egg cracking. As Easter approaches, and Easter is approaching now, of course, we now have a chance to, instead of the ice bucket, just crack an egg over your head and then nominate others to do it.
It raises awareness of autism, and is it raising money as well? Or is
it's going to raise money as well. So, yes, you can be egged in aid of the Get Maisie Home campaign.
Right.
And Dean Windass was nominated for the challenge by former teammate Ian Ashby, with club mascot Rory the Tiger doing the honours.
Tony, thank you very much. We'll stop there. We'll come back there in a minute, if that's all right.
Thank you.
For the moment, don't go away. You're watching Estuary TV News. A little later, we ask, where's the Mayor? Specifically, David Prattley of Hessel, and Dan Kemp will bring you all the sports news. In times of financial hardship, councils are cutting back on public spending, but there could be a way to save some of these services. Dave Nunn has been to a library in Humberston, now run by a community interest company.
In times of financial hardship, local councils are turning to other sources to keep local services open. Your Community Hub in Humberston won the contract to run the library from the council and say it's been a time of ups and downs.
In the actual process with the council has been relatively simple, but the actual planning for a business plan, having never done something like this before, was a mission to say the least. It's had its ups and downs. At some points you obviously feel it's more down than up, but when you've got people coming into the local tea room now and calling it their local and just popping in for a coffee, it's an amazing feeling.
Finances and time are an issue with groups like this taking on public services. However, the service here seems to be going off to a successful start.
Really, really well received. We've got over 300 members for the library. In relation to the tea room, we've been hitting the targets for the last 2 weeks. This week, obviously, this is our third week of trading. We've also got classes going on throughout the day. We've got baby yoga, we've got stay and play on a Monday, we've got a diet club on a Friday, the Kelly diet 11 till 12 on a Friday. We've got sewing club on a Monday night, so it's a proper community venue.
Nathan thinks that projects like the one carried out here and the tea room at Caister Library could be the key to keeping these vital services open.
In relation to actually replicating this around the country, without a doubt, look at Caister Library, it's a very similar setup, slightly different on the business side, but it's a very similar setup. And that's a proven library, that's worked for I think 3 or 4 years now. I took a lot of ideas from Caister Library and we've tried to implement them here. Slightly different venue obviously, but it works. The proof in the pudding is going to be 6 months down the line if we're still here, but the local community are clearly coming out in come rain or shine.
Time now to find out where's the mayor. This week we chase down David Prattley, Mayor of Hessle.
I'm across back in Hull for Susan Cunliffe-Lister, who was the Lord Lieutenant of the East Riding, for her summation of the birthday honours invitations list. And in the middle of March, that's going a little further ahead, I've got my own civic service, which obviously is in Hessle. So it's a hectic schedule in reality. There are several days coming up in March where there are civic duties on 4 or 5 consecutive days in a row. And at the end of the day, they've got to be shoehorned in with ongoing town council meetings, ongoing committee meetings.
The news this week has been full of MPs taking work outside their jobs in Parliament. We asked what you thought of politicians moonlighting.
No, they shouldn't. If they can't make with one job, they should. Well, you know what I mean.
They should to survive on one job.
Well, they do, but it's greed.
Well, yes, if you can support it, if you need the money, but there's so few jobs going round that more people need them. It's like having second houses. Should you have a second house when there's so many people need houses?
Oh, no, I think because, you know, if they're going to run the whole country, they should be only focused on that. What's the point? Because I think that that's the only thing that they should focus on because it's very important. So yeah, they shouldn't have second jobs, no, not at all.
Where do they find time for a second job if they're such a busy MP on such a large salary?
Big burning question, isn't it? Yes, I think they should. They bring other experience to the MP's role if they've outside experience and interest. So yes, probably with some regulation, but I think it's a good idea.
I strongly disagree with it. I think it's an outrage. An outrage. They get enough money. Any spare job should go to somebody who hasn't got a job.
Tony Barker's still here, and so are the newspapers. Tony, you found a rather glamorous musical story there, I think.
It's page 2 of the Grimsby Telegraph from Wednesday. There it is. This links nicely to the Brit Awards of this week, of course, and local girl Ella Henderson, who may not have won an award, but what a year of music it certainly was. And this is a nice spin on the particular story there, because this is about a lady called Ellie Jones from Cleethorpes, who had a chance to go and rub shoulders with the glamorous pop stars of the area, and nationally, internationally, and she won a prize just by buying some tyres. Lucky devil, why does this never happen to me? She won a prize, and she with red carpet treatment. She says here that her real decision, of course, was about the dress. What do you wear? So she narrowed it down from 50 dresses,
oh, good
50,
God. Really?
to a final 2. And a night in a hotel as well. How lucky she was for that. But
it's rather splendid event, though, the Brits, isn't it? To go to.
I watched it, and I thought, in a way, I thought yes, it was a nice try for the way Anton Deck was able to move around the room. I think sometimes it didn't always work in the way they wanted it to.
Is this the occasion when Madonna fell over?
It was. Again, I heard talk on the radio. Was she actually singing in the first place? Therefore, did it really affect her that much? But as a true pro, they didn't stop the show. They carried on.
I think she was brilliant. Just got up and kept going. That's absolute trooper. Good for her.
Imagine if you were caught at your neck there, you know, by a gown you got.
Well, I mean, it happens to me every time I wear a big long cloak like that. It's
I think an internal inquiry into the wardrobe department.
It's an occupational hazard. Just remember the Ella Henderson story. She's a girl from Tetney, I think.
Tetney in Louth, yes, that's right. And she was up for 2 awards: Best British Female Solo Artist and British Single for Ghost. Now, when you look at the year, I thought, oh, that'll win, or those Clean Bandit as well with their song. But you thought, goodness, what a vintage year. You must have thought, of all years to have brought Ghost out, when it's such a busy year for great songs that were very catchy songs anyway. And she's done very well. I mean, considering you take part in X Factor, you do so well in a competition like that. You don't have to win X Factor to get all the plaudits and the glory and the public appearances. You know, she's been on virtually everything. She's become a name I think we're all very proud of, certainly in this part of the world. Trouble is, though, if you could book her before, you can't book her now for personal appearances.
You're much better informed on the popular culture than I am, Tony. Very, very interesting events going on in the hit parade.
Indeed.
A very cheerful story here, a cheerful story of triumph over adversity.
Let's go to Scunthorpe for this one.
Scunthorpe Telegraph?
Scunthorpe Telegraph, and this is a lady called Linda Hawkins. This is, when you think about, we hear about Jane Tomlinson a lot and how she did so well for cancer and fighting cancer and raising money for others. This lady has done something which I think is quite dear to my heart, about raising awareness through writing a book. And it's a book called The Walking Miracle. Now she's, the headline suggests, beaten cancer 3 times. She had a stem cell transplant when she was, as she said, at death's door. Feels so lucky. But you think, when you've got cancer once, you must think, what's happening to me? When you've got cancer again, and then a 3rd time, you know.
It's rotten luck. I mean, she had once in her throat and I think twice in her lung. And she also has a condition in which she has a very poorly working immune system, which can't help. I think the title of her book is Walking Miracle, because that's what a doctor told us she was.
Yes, she says it also, she wants people to feel less alone when they're fighting cancer, because it can be terribly traumatic. I've not had cancer myself, and no one in my family has, but I can just imagine for those people who are faced with this, think, well, what a trauma. It's life's hard enough in the first place.
The interesting scientific note there, medical note, is that it was that stem cell therapy that has saved her. And that stem cell therapy, that's the sort of research and medical development that is just miracle working, isn't it?
It is. It seems to be in other parts of the world where stem cell treatments have happened, or people have taken advantage of it, or been able to. I know in this country, whether it's not something which the NHS is too sure about, but when you've got something like that, it is one of these finds or hopes that you think, well, if this treatment can take me away from being in a wheelchair all my life, then can't we do it? And I don't know whether sometimes it is people think whether they are hoodwinked by it and believe it isn't going to be the cure for everything. But I'm pleased for this lady at Ashby that she's got inspiration and is sharing her inspiration with other people.
It's a very cheerful story, I think.
Well done to her.
Then another good one about health and how longevity might be achieved. Lady in, this is the Market Raisin Mail, I think, isn't it?
I think it is. Market Raisin Mail in North Lincolnshire, there we are, yes. Raisin's oldest resident celebrates her 104th birthday.
104 years old. That means she was born in 1911. That was the year of the coronation of George V. That was the year in which members of Parliament were first ever paid.
Gosh, you've done your research.
And 104, and I think there's a quotation that from her son talking about her, saying that she's just a bit bloody-minded.
Yes, this is a lady called Mary Brannick, who is in a nursing home now, but yes, in Market Raisin's Waterloo House care home. She's been there for the past 12 years and very well cared for, enjoys it there. Well, of course you would do, because everything's laid on for you and you just enjoy
well, nobody expects you to do the washing up when you're 104,
exactly.
do they?
And thank goodness, you know, that's what machines are there for. But yes, her son said, I was only a little lad and I would go with her on deliveries, sitting in the back of the van. You know, she was she ran a butcher's business. She did really well.
And she took over it during the war when her husband was away. She said she's always believed in working hard. She's got an attitude to get things done.
Yes.
And she's clearly just decided not to die.
Strong-willed lady.
I think it's an absolutely splendid attitude.
A lesson to us all. Well done,
I'm
Mary.
not tolerating this mortality rubbish, and I'm not going to do it. Excellent.
I wonder what her bucket list was
Tony,
like.
we must stop there.
Thanks, you.
Over now to Dan Kemp for all the sports news.
There's another big weekend of sport ahead, but nowhere are the stakes greater than in North Ferriby, where the Villagers are just 90 minutes from Wembley. A win tomorrow afternoon against Bath City will propel the club into the final, where they'll face the winners of an all-conference Premier tie between Torquay and Wrexham. Ferriby and Bath City are at 2-2 with all to play for, and the club are hoping for the local community to really get behind the team.
We hope we'll get a crowd of around 1,500. I mean, any football supporters, I'd urge them to come along. It should be a great atmosphere down here and fantastic opportunity to get to Wembley.
Elsewhere, Hull City are in Premier League action away to Stoke. The Tigers have lifted themselves up to 15th place in the top flight after going 3 games unbeaten and are 10 points behind tomorrow's opponents. Scunthorpe United host League One's bottom club Yeovil Town. Saturday's opponents are 5 points adrift of safety and the Iron continue to chase a playoff place. They're 5 points short of 6th place Doncaster Rovers. And after beating Telford in midweek, Grimsby Town host mid-table Braintree. The Mariners now have an 8-point cushion over 6th place Eastleigh, with the same gap being present between Town and the new league leaders Bristol Rovers. After a week off for the World Club Series, there's now back to Super League action. Hull FC are at Salford City Reds on Saturday evening, kicking off at 7:30, whilst Hull KR host Wigan Warriors at 3 p.m. on Sunday, as they look for their first win. In ice hockey, the Hull Stingrays have 3 fixtures in 3 days, beginning tonight in Belfast. The Rays are playing the Belfast Giants in Ireland before returning to Hull for a Saturday-Sunday doubleheader, where the Sheffield Steelers and Dundee Stars make the trip to the Hull Arena. Face-off in those 2 games are 7 and 6 p.m. respectively. And finally, Rugby Union, Hull Ionians play their game in hand tomorrow at Brantian Park, where a win will take them back to the top of National League 2 North. Kick-off for the league's bottom club is at 2:15. Hull IUFC aren't in action, but in Midland Street, Scunthorpe IUFC are at Sandbach. And that's all for the sport.
Thanks, Dan. Tony, will you just remind me, how can people get in touch with Linkage if they want their services?
Our website is linkage.org.uk, or go onto Facebook and search for Linkage Community Trust there. Plenty of information about us there.
And the name of the radio station in Yorkshire?
Westwolds Radio to Pocklington, coming in June this year. We're looking forward to that very much.
Available on FM?
On FM, online and on mobiles.
Tony, thank you very much. That's all we have time for. If you have a story for us, you know the details here on the screen, estuary.tv, or phone Grimsby 31553. Until next week, good evening.
Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. Bright or sunny intervals and the odd shower for much of Saturday, but becoming very windy by evening, with more general rain spreading from the west and a maximum temperature of 8 degrees. Very windy with gales in places on Sunday, with rain soon clearing to sunny intervals and increasingly wintry showers.